a very interesting relationship. You know, as we complain a lot about the federal government and the loss of freedom to the federal government, which is a legitimate concern. However, in our day-to-day lives, it seems that we lose more freedom to our municipal governments. And the over-regulation in our lives, both on business and individuals. I'm an entrepreneur down in the marrow of my bones. When I was 12 years old, I was pushing a cart around the neighborhood selling things that I had bought from a big business in town, and I was reselling at a small markup, and buying and selling in high school and all the way through. And I have come to the conclusion that the biggest obstacle to business is not lack of financing or competition, but it's overregulation by government. I had a paper route for the Mesa Tribune when I was about 12, and actually sold the Mesa Tribune on the streets of Mesa when I was about 8 or 9 years old. Now, it seems like most of those endeavors nowadays are illegal, at least without background checks and fingerprinting. And I went down to the city of Mesa a while back to, well, several years ago. My sister is an author, and I wanted to promote her book, including selling a book to the Mesa Public Library. In order to sell the book to the Mesa Public Library, it took background check and fingerprints and a permit to become a peddler and a sales tax license. And by the time all those things came through, that upsurge on her books had died out, and the opportunity was passed, or at least for that part of it. It's something that I thought was a valuable concept because of the length of time it took to get that permit. The opportunity was gone. I think so many people face that. And so the relationship between the cities and the states, and I saw that very clearly as I sponsored the Homegrown Freedom Act this year, which the city's Chandler in particular did not like it. It addressed what we can do in our backyards. And so they approached me and talked about local control. Well, local control, I'm told, is a wonderful thing because it's closest to the people. And as we struggled with this, desires of our constituents who want the freedom to do things in their own backyard, and what was blocking them was local government. And when they approached local government to try to make some changes, they found it very difficult. And so as I pondered that balance, I have pondered it a lot recently, the role of the state, which constitutionally is supreme. Nevertheless, that theory of local control and being closest to the people, what is the truth, and what is the proper role of government, and how do you find that balance? And I came to the conclusion as I looked at the process that in the legislature, the Constitution designs our system, and our founding fathers designed it to be very difficult to change laws. And there's probably a dozen places, as you well know, in the legislative process for a bill to die, and many opportunities for people to weigh in, pro and con, and express their feelings. And so to get a bill through, it's extremely difficult. This Homegrown Freedom Act went through the Senate and passed 29-1. The one nay vote came and apologized and explained that they would be voting against it because of constituent pressure. Chandler opposed it very vocally, but their testimony compared to the constituents who came down and testified in the Senate hearing was not very strong, and so we passed it without a problem. Unfortunately, when it went to the House, the League of Cities and Towns decided to oppose it without talking to me, and we had had numerous conversations in my office specifically about this bill and how they felt. Nevertheless, it got to the House, and they signed in opposed, and because of this very active constituent group called Backyard Farmers United, they called me and made me aware of the fact that the League of Cities and Towns had signed and opposed, as did several other cities. And that was unfortunate because all the Democrats then who loved the bill before, like many times in life, were like sheeple, and we followed the leader and each bailed out. And then the few Republicans in committee, because they were getting pressured from their constituents, began to criticize the bill, and the support began to fade. Through this whole process, the end of the story is that bill was killed in the House as a prominent Republican gathered some votes secretly, and when it came to committee of the whole, according to prior agreement, of course I can't prove this, but people talk, they all decided to kill it in committee of the whole, even though if it had gone to a vote in third read it might have survived. But and the largest argument was local control. So I say, as I have pondered this system and how hard it is to get something through, rightfully so, because we already have 6 volumes of state statute. We don't need a lot more, but there are many things that need to be done. They need to be done very carefully. Now, on the other side of the fence, the city of Mesa, for example, where I grew up, can meet as a city council and a majority vote, and the law is changed. Therefore, I've come to the personal conclusion that because of the ease of changing the law, we are losing our freedom much more quickly to municipal government than to state or even federal government. Now, so I won't be misunderstood, of course, federal government is guilty of many things. Number one, of not doing the 20 or so things that the U.S. Constitution assigned it to do, and to do many other unconstitutional things that it should not be doing. Nevertheless, like I say, as I've pondered this, I see municipal government and HOAs as being a real threat to our liberty. Well, it's a real long answer to a short question. How would you seek to improve on it? I think that understanding, always seeking to understand the proper role of government myself better, and the talents of dealing with other people, the art of persuasion and educating other people. And one thing I have found that's helped a lot is by explaining to people the difference between liberty and lifestyle. And this has caused a lot of people, including myself, to ponder a lot as I've gone through this process and come to the conclusion that when government comes to us and asks us to protect our lifestyle, we buy that with our liberty, including when we denied the right to smoke. And we're all grateful that there's no one here puffing on a big cigar and spoiling the air for all of us. Nevertheless, when we required smokers to be restricted as to where they can smoke, we bought that with some of our liberty, and it's a very dangerous thing. Not that I want to bring it back. Don't misunderstand me, but we need to be aware of what we're doing. And the proper role of government is something that's greatly misunderstood by almost everyone. And as I reviewed the Arizona Constitution, I read the words, the proper role of government is to protect the liberty of the people. Life, liberty, and I would say property rights. Because only owning property is very frail if we have not the freedom to do what we care to do with our property. And of course, where's that balance between the end of my nose? We don't want to take away the liberty of others, but again, I'll remind us that we need to protect liberty and not lifestyle. If we go to the government complaining about our neighbors, and they go to our neighbors and stop them from what they want to do, we buy that lifestyle of having quiet, no smells, no sounds, a perfect environment. We buy that with our liberty. So it has to be spent very, very carefully. I apologize for such a long answer.